What we do here on this here show of Something About Catholics. I'm Ryan.
I'm Jessie.
What was that?
I'm Jessie.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Whoa.
Very nice.
I feel like I need to talk with a deeper voice. Picks it up more.
You can do that. You could try it.
Okay.
So.
You're starting with the so.
Hmm?
So, my dear. You're starting with so.
I, for whatever reason, feel like I have been tapped to talk specifically about St. Francis of Assisi, much in the same way that sometimes I feel the need to talk about St. Thomas Aquinas, which is very strange. It's really weird sometimes how something comes out of nowhere. I don't really know what to make of that, so this is me making an honest attempt to talk a little bit about that.
Tell us about St. Francis of Assisi.
So, St. Francis of Assisi was originally named Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone and was born in either 1181 or 1182 in Assisi, Italy, to a wealthy cloth merchant, Pietro di Bernardone, and his mother, Pica. Initially, he lived a little life of luxury, enjoying fine clothes and entertainment, and was known for his partying and military ambitions, even fighting in the Assisi-Paraguay War in 1202. He was captured and imprisoned for nearly a year, and during that time, he wound up falling ill. And while he was ill, he began to receive visions, making the start of his conversion. A pivotal moment came when he kissed a leper, symbolizing his embrace of humility, and heard a voice from a crucifix at San Damiano telling him to rebuild my church, which he initially took literally by repairing chapels. Didn't we learn about humility today during the homily?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That humility is important when praying.
It's kind of weird.
It is weird. Keep going.
Interesting.
There's 3 parts of prayer that were important, noted from the catechism, and one of them was humility, having humility when praying.
It seems like a very important one, so it's interesting to hear it here in parallel with this reading. Francis announced his worldly goods, famously stripping naked before the bishop to reject his father's wealth, and dedicated himself to a life of poverty. In 1209, he composed the Regula Primitiva, seeking and receiving oral approval from Pope Innocent III on April 16th, 1210, to found the Order of Friars Minor, known as the Franciscans. He later co-founded the Order of St. Clare of the Poor Clares in 1212 with St. Clare of Assisi, and established the Third Order around 1221 for lay people. His Regula Secunda was approved by Pope Honorius III on November 29th, 1223, solidifying his movement. Francis died on October 3rd, 1226, and was canonized on July 16th, 1228, becoming a patron saint of Italy alongside St. Catherine of Siena, someone who we also just recently talked about.
Mm-hmm.
In 1979, Pope John Paul II declared him the patron saint of ecology, a legacy reflected in Pope Francis's 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. St. Francis is one of those saints that's often depicted with animals. And there's a couple different facts that I want to read off in regards to St. Francis and some pieces of his life. So his name was originally John. At his birth in 1182, his mother had St. Francis baptize John, or Giovanni, after St. John the Baptist. However, when his father, a rich cloth merchant, returned from business travels, he renamed him Francis, or Francisco, because France was where he made his livelihood. Before his conversion, Francis, who was wealthy and good-looking, led a life full of partying and frivolity. His partying buddies even called him Dominus because he was the king of partying, paying for lavish parties full of food, wine, and women. Francis was enamored with Arthurian legends and desired to be a knight in the same vein. Francis even fought in 2 wars, one we mentioned, which was a civil war in Assisi, and then the other was where he was captured and was made a prisoner of war. That began the start of his conversion.
Can you imagine just changing your child's name because you were away when they were born?
Different times. I'm
looking at it and it says Pietro wanted his son to be the last thing that Pietro wanted in his son was a man of God. He wanted a man of business, a cloth merchant like he was. He especially wanted a son who would reflect his infatuation with France, naming him Francesco, which is the equivalent of calling him Frenchman. And then I guess his mom's wants one because of everything that you're going on and saying next.
Well, I mean, I guess if you can make the change to change the child's name on a whim, it's far less egregious than changing a child's sex without that individual's consent or having full understanding of exactly what's happening. So
yeah, I'd be mad if I were the mom though. I'd be like, you were gone.
I would be too.
I had this baby, I named this baby, and now you want to change his name and not for anything good.
So during a 40-day retreat dedicated to Saint Michael the Archangel, he had a vision of a 6-winged seraph attached to a cross. He miraculously received at the same time a painful wound of the heart, which seemed to pierce it. When the vision ended, his own hands and feet bore the marks of the angelic crucifixion, which he had seen in his vision. So he's actually the first person on record to ever receive the stigmata.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He traveled into Muslim territory to convert the Sultan. So during the 5th Crusade, Francis traveled to Egypt to convert the Sultan Malik al-Kamil. And he even challenged the Islamic religious leaders to a trial by fire, where he would walk through fire with them to prove the truth of Christianity. Though the Sultan did not convert, Francis and Sultan became true friends, and 10 years later, al-Kamil freely gave Jerusalem to the Christians.
It's a testament to being friends with people. Sometimes things happen by osmosis after just having a friendship.
I think that's pretty cool.
And it changed a lot of people's lives, not just theirs.
Whenever you think of St. Francis, though, you always think of him in pictures with animals, and his love for animals is really central to his legacy, and that's what earns him the title of patron saint of the animals. So why is that? Well, there's numerous stories of St. Francis preaching to birds, such as in the Spoleto Valley near Bavagana, where doves and crows listened and rejoiced, and he blessed them with the sign of the cross. There's another famous tale involving a wolf of Gubbio, where he tamed a ferocious wolf terrorizing a town, making a peace pact that the wolf would stop attacking if fed by the townspeople, living peacefully for 2 years until its death. He also released rabbits and fish, preaching to them, and is often depicted with a bird in his hand. His Canticle of the Creatures calls animals brothers and sisters, reflecting his belief in their divine connection. His feast day, which takes place on October 4th, is marked by animal blessings, now World Animal Day, highlighting his influence on animal welfare. He's interesting too, just because we talked a little bit about humility earlier, and there's so much of, obviously Francis's DNA in the Franciscan order, emphasizing things like poverty, simplicity and care for creation. And I think that's inspired a lot of environmental stewardship. His life challenges modern society to live sustainably and compassionately, influencing movements like the Laudato Si movement that we talked about earlier, and his Stigmata, which was received in the year 1224, and the first live nativity scene in 1223 using real animals further cement his spiritual impact. So I had no idea that he had anything to do with the first live nativity scene. That's pretty neat.
This says Francis's conversion did not happen overnight. God had waited for him for 25 years, and now it was Francis's turn to wait. Francis started to spend more time in prayer. He went off to a cave and wept for his sins. Sometimes God's grace overwhelmed him with joy, but life just couldn't stop for God. There was a business to run and customers to wait on. One day after riding through the countryside, Francis, the man who loved beauty, who was so picky about food but hated deformity, came face to face with a leper. Repelled by the appearance and the smell of the leper, Francis nevertheless jumped down from his horse and kissed the hand of the leper. When his kiss of peace was returned, Francis was filled with joy. He rode off, he turned around for a last wave and saw that the leper had disappeared. He always looked upon it as a test from God that he had passed.
Wow.
It's funny. Also a good thing for you and I when we're talking about not hearing God when we're in prayer.
Well, remember this the next time that we have somebody over that's like a priest or a deacon. But a fellow Franciscan of St. Francis, Thomas of Solano, is he's one of St. Francis's earliest biographers. And he tells a couple other stories about St. Francis and the animals. So to give a little bit more context about St. Francis releasing animals, there were at least 2 occasions where St. Francis freed hares caught in traps. Once while sitting on a lakeshore near the town of Rieti, a fisherman brought Francis a particularly large fish. Francis embraced the fish as his brother, placed it back in the water, and began to preach. The fish waited patiently for Francis to finish his sermon before swimming away.
That's adorable.
Francis's love for animals did have its limits. He had no patience for mice or flies, as none of us do. And when he cursed a pig who trampled a lamb, the pig immediately became ill and died a few days later. Francis also ate meat and was reportedly fond of fish in particular. So what let the fish of Rieti off the hook remains a mystery. That's amazing. I love it. Love it. The most famous expression of Franciscan peacemaking is not the depiction of the wolf, referred to as the Wolf of Gubbio that we talked about earlier. Rather, it is the prayer of St. Francis, or the peace prayer. This prayer is recorded nowhere in Franciscan sources, instead first appearing in a French Catholic magazine in 1913 and printed in Italian by a Vatican magazine in 1916. The prayer was largely popularized in the English-speaking world by Protestants and gained popularity during the dark days of World War, economic depression, and uneasy peace that loomed over the first half of the 20th century. The prayer's call to peacemaking is deeply personal, and it emphasizes personal transformation as a way to peace, seeking to understand, to love. And for peace activists, these emphases were quite consistent with a turn toward spiritual-based nonviolent action. For others, they set the prayer free from political implications. Giving pardon and dying into eternal life are all personal concerns.
Who wrote the prayer? Do we know?
Well, I think that's what's so interesting. It says the prayer of St. Francis, according to the author Applebaum from U.S. Catholic notes that the prayer is recorded nowhere in Franciscan sources, and it first appeared in that French Catholic magazine in 1913 and then printed in Italian by a Vatican magazine in 1916. So,
Where did it come from? Where did it come from?
really interesting stuff.
What's the full story with the wolf?
The Wolf of Gubbio?
I was trying to look it up while you were talking. There's a Taming the Wolf Institute that has a story about it. They have pictures. That must have been a reenactment.
So this is according to franciscanmedia.org. So it goes a little like this. The story of how St. Francis of Assisi tamed the Wolf of Gubbio is one of the great legends linked with the life of the saint. I have never been too worried as to whether the story was historically true or not. I'm more interested in seeing how the story fits into the pattern of biblical themes and of God's plans for creation. In this well-known legend, St. Francis goes to the Italian town of Gubbio, where a fierce wolf had been terrorizing the village and even killing several people, including children. During his visit to Gubbio, Francis goes out to meet the wolf. You can find an account of this event in The Little Flowers of St. Francis, a 14th century collection of stories about Francis and his companions. According to the story, when the wolf sees St. Francis, he comes charging at the saint with his mouth open, ready to attack. St. Francis immediately makes the sign of the cross over him and says, "Come here, brother wolf. I command you on behalf of Christ that you do no harm to me or to anyone." As soon as St. Francis did this, notes the Little Flowers, the fearsome wolf closed his mouth and stopped running. And once the command was given, it came meekly as a lamb and threw itself at the feet of St. Francis. St. Francis proceeded to scold Brother Wolf for destroying and killing the creatures of God. "The whole town is complaining about you," Francis tells the wolf gently, "but I want to make peace between you and the people. And so I promise that I will have food given to you regularly, Brother Wolf, by the people of this town so that you will no longer suffer hunger. And I want you, Brother Wolf, to promise that you will never harm any human person or animal." The wolf showed agreement by simply bowing his head. And so St. Francis asked the people of the town if they will promise to provide food for the wolf regularly. They all say they will. And then St. Francis asks the wolf to give a guarantee in front of all the people that he will no longer inflict harm upon the people of Gubbio or its animals. Then the wolf, lifting his right paw, placed it in the hand of St. Francis. Because of this action, there was such rejoicing and wonder among all the people that they began to cry to heaven, praising and blessing God who sent Francis to them, who through his merits had freed them with the jaws of the cruel beast. Afterwards, that same wolf lived in Gubbio for 2 years, and he tamely entered the houses, going from door to door, without doing any harm to anyone and without any being done to him. He was kindly fed by the people. Finally, after 2 years, Brother Wolf died of old age, at which the citizens grieved very much.
I wonder if they all called him Brother Wolf at that point.
Just like how I went from house to house there.
Alms for the poor.
How cool is that?
It is cool. The thing I'm reading says that Francis, as he and the wolf walk back to the town, it says he called out, "Come, countrymen, the wolf will not hurt you. Let us talk in peace. I have spoken with the wolf," and he apologizes for his actions and wants to make amends.
Something that's kind of odd that I didn't know, because I've heard the Wolf of Gubbio story many times before, but according to this same article on Franciscan Media, there's a piece called "The Echo of the Peaceable Kingdom." The peaceable kingdom is an expression of the Messianic era of peace, foreseen by the prophet Isaiah in this famous passage. "Then the wolf shall be a guest of the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and young lion shall browse together, with a little child to guide them." It is clear that the inspired writer of the book of Revelation, the final book of the Bible, was referring to the peaceable kingdom when he wrote, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, God's dwelling is with the human race. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death and mourning, wailing or pain, for the old order has passed away.'" Surely the inspired writer of Revelation, whom we know as John, is pointing us back to Isaiah's description of the rise of the Messiah. "But a shoot shall sprout from the stump of Jessie, and from his roots a bud shall blossom. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding. He shall judge the poor with justice, and decide aright from the land's afflicted. Then the wolf shall be guest of the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid." As a footnote of the Catholic Study Bible tells us, this picture of the idyllic harmony of paradise is a dramatic symbol of the universal peace and justice of messianic times. What Isaiah is showing us here is a vision of a future era in which the original state of peace and harmony in the Garden of Eden, lost through disobedience and sin, is restored. In this new world, there will be no pain or sorrow or enmity. Man, I can't talk today. Or untimely death.
It's okay.
Only happiness and rejoicing. Even the animals will return to a state of innocence and bliss. Clearly, the author of Revelation goes out of his way to show that, just as the first book of the Bible began with an ideal garden paradise where God, humans, and beasts dwelt peacefully together, so now the Bible's final book ends with the original garden of harmony and peace restored. In part, what the story of Francis and the wolf reveals to us is that St. Francis, as a follower of Christ, the Messiah foretold by Isaiah, is helping to bring about the same peace and reconciliation in this world. Did you catch that? It was a long way around of saying that, but this peace, harmony, and reconciliation is not only meant to exist between God and humans, but also between God and the whole family of creation. I think that's pretty cool.
It is cool. I'm back learning about his kiss.
The leper kiss?
Yeah. There's something on Holy Cross USA. The story of Francis's kiss reveals our own wounds. We are often repelled by people's pain and differences. We look away from the illness of others because we fear that same pain may someday be ours. We fear the potential loss of health and shelter, of our independence, our status, our loss, that would cause us to sacrifice everything, including all that we feel entitled to possess. We fear labels of other people who would place upon us, labels that make us objects to others. The author of this article, "I know my own resistance toward people who have suffered great loss. Shortly after ordination, I was called to a nursing home to visit a man completely paralyzed from a motorcycle accident. I entered the room and stood by his bedside. We were the same age, and as he spoke to me, his speech hesitant and slow, I was filled with fear. Finally, he said, 'I am the one who was in an accident. Why are you so afraid?' This question pierced my soul and broke me open. My resistance, my fear for myself, kept me from seeing him as a child of God. He freed me in ways I am still seeing. This encounter still draws me to God. That man's pain, in fact, kissed me. I also remember the first person I met who was living with AIDS in the mid-1980s. In those early years, we simply did not know the social consequences of the disease." Reminds me of COVID for us in perspective at this time. "I sat with him in my office and I offered him a can of Diet Pepsi. Between sips, he would place the can on the table next to his chair. I kept staring at it, and he could tell I was worried the can might be a contagion. After he left, I didn't know how to discard the can. It was empty, but I was filled with fear and anxiety. I was worried about my own life and not the life of this man who was dying. I feared my own losses. Those fears blinded me to the dignity of the man who was struggling to survive the disease. Francis found God by confronting his own resistance to powerless people. His surrender to a leper initiated his deeper faith, a new fidelity toward God. Francis found freedom to live and act from God's initiative, from God's mercy and tenderness. Poverty, simplicity, and deep trust in God became his entire life after his awakening. Francis's reluctance to surrender to faith may ring true in our own lives. God may be asking us to expose our deep resistance to faith with a new loving trust. Francis's kiss changed the course of his life and models changes for our own.
Very cool.
It was written by Reverend Ronald Patrick Robb. He's at the time of the writing of this article, he was a religious superior of the Holy Cross House, the retirement and medical facility at Notre Dame, Indiana.
Reverend, what was the name? Reverend Ronald?
Ronald Patrick Robb, R-A-A-B. Robb. Looks like he's a award-winning author, blogger, and visual artist. But I think pointing out that we can all have that same human reaction to other people's suffering, and then our own resistance to trusting God and God's plan. Both of those things are very human experiences.
Are they?
Oh, yeah. You want to do a voice change for me? Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't get it. Only you do? Is it because I don't have as deep of a voice?
Hello?
Yeah, yours is much better. Mine drifts just a tiny bit.
Just a bit. So that's what I got on St. Francis. And that's what you got on St. Francis.
Thank you.
That's what we got on St. Francis.
That's what we got. That's what we learned.
I